So thank you very much for this short introduction, and I will warm welcome to my presentation after this lunch break. My name is Falk Fürihausen. I'm from the coordination office SDI in Germany, and in my speech I would like to show you the approach in Germany to define national code lists and styles, also to make Inspire more usable for the national or the local level. As an initial situation, we can first find out that the European Inspire model provides the framework for national or local implementation. And in particular, we want to look at the available Inspire styles and code lists, so there are reasons that justify the definition of the Inspire code lists and the default cartographic styles under cost-benefit considerations. On the other hand, there are legal requirements, legal definitions in national laws, declarations of cartographic representations and linguistic requirements in Germany, which must be taken into account in Inspire. So that makes it necessary from our point of view to deal with such user requirements. It must be possible to consider such local characteristics as a part of the national implementation and make them usable at the European level. That means we have a framework, Inspire, and on the other side, the national semantics or the national schemas. And what is the theoretical approach of information and knowledge integration in global models? 4 different views can be considered. In the scenario A, it's the integration scenario. This describes the schema integration from a national schema to a parent global schema. The semantics of the global view and the semantics of the national view are defined by data schemas. Here, the data schema of the global schema acts as a container for the national models. The national schema is imported unchained in Inspire, but this is often not possible, we see. In the scenario B of the schema separation, it's to the right here, the global schema and the national schema are considered independently. In schema separation, the national schemas act independently alongside the global schemas. And that is often the current situation in Germany. In the scenario C of the schema inclusion, this is here, of this approach, this is often considered in literature along with the integration. Basically, however, differentiation can be represented on the 2 commands, import and include for the XML schemas. While the import tag allows elements from other namespaces to be imported and prefixed with their own. The inclusion is therefore applicable for the same concepts and can be achieved by providing code lists for national extension in the global schema. And this is very powerful, we think. And the last scenario D is the schema exclusion. It's this one here. The national semantic is again kept separate from the global schema. In this concept, the national data are extracted and have their own non-schema bounded semantics. The global schema acts as a kind of schema catalog based on distributed semantics. This model provides the highest level of self-employment, but also it's most exposed to risks of inhomogeneity of national information. The national semantics is often implemented in Germany via code lists and enumerations, so we have to look at the regulations from Inspire as the next step. Inspire defines 4 different kinds of code lists. On the one hand, that only the values in Inspire are allowed. These code lists are non-extensible code lists. It's the type A code list. On the other hand, Inspire offers us the possibilities of extending code lists through data providers for certain types B, C, and D. And the last sentence is also important, where a data provider provides a value that is not specified in this regulation, that value and its definition shall be made available in a register. So we have to use a registry to provide these values of data provided. In our case, in Germany, it's the GDPR registry. It was also necessary to check out existing code lists and to evaluate them against Inspire codes. Here's an example of land use in the national model and in HILUX, the hierarchical land use classification system. So on the left side is our national code list, and here is the HILUX code list. And what you see is, or it should be noted, that the national lists are often much more detailed. And if we translate these values in Inspire, without national lists, information will also be lost after the transformation. The same applies to the styles, which are represented differently in different models. On the upper side, an area of agricultural use. This is here, area of agricultural use for a spatial plan. In Inspire technical guidance is drawn in the yellow color, and on the plan signed regulation 1919 in Germany, this area must be drawn in the green color, and that's the legal requirement. So the same data, the same meaning, and different port rail rules, and this is what we managed. If you mock up the services, another problem for use is seen. And this is an X-plan service with the national specifications and the port rail rules. On the right side here, the Inspire service for the same data. And I ask you, which map would you like to use on the national level? It's our representation and the Inspire service. So how we can solve this problem? First, we continue to use our national models in addition to the Inspire data. It's a separation concept from Inspire schema and a separated national schema. And what is the consequence? Inspire will not be used at the national and the local level. Or we include the national semantics into global Inspire schema. We use the scenario C. And what is the consequence for us? We should provide national Inspire code lists and styles in the member states and also in Germany. This is what we want to do. I don't want to go into the detail of the technical development of these code lists and of these registers, because we have submitted another presentation in this conference. But I want to show you examples of the first national code lists and styles within the GDPR registry. Here is a national list with legal definitions of German monument in the federal states. The code list state legal definition record value with our legal definitions and the reference to this federal laws. And this is a new DE code list in our registry. We can use the language code, DE, and also a language code English. And here is an example of the format in XML. And if we click on the link, we get the code lists and the representation into Inspire registry format. And we can use these to share our national code list also in Inspire. The user front end is here. This is the definition, the label, definition, and all codes are represented in a user-friendly front end. And this code list here, here you see the label, the definition, our codes, and the Inspire reference as a parent element. And also we can represent also the semantics of other data specification here, like borehole ML in the registry code lists. So With the generic concept, the GDE registry can also be used for styles. Here is just a small example, example styles with a styled layer description, including the preview of scaled vector graphics file. For this register, we are still in development, but as a part of the central GDE registry, the availability of all style files can be ensured for all data providers and the users in Germany, also for our national styles to implement Inspire. In my presentation, I want to answer the questions: are the national Inspire codelists and styles a way to use Inspire at national level? From my point of view, it could be presented how national requirements can be considered most officially to a national registry. By integrating the national regulations into the Inspire framework, the cost-benefit considerations and added values can be increased also for the data providers and the data users at the national and the local level. And finally, the availability of national code lists and styles in GDE registry can also help to promote the use of Inspire in Germany. So, many thanks for your attention. Are there any questions?
That's it. Well, thank you for your introduction. So my name is François Dumortier, and I am here as the chairman of the Belgian Inspire Coordination Committee. First of all, I would like to make a brief survey among the assistants. Could you please raise your hand if you are involved as a data provider in the implementation of the Inspire directive? Thank you. Keep your hand raised. Could you please lower your hand if you could meet the deadlines that are included in the directive? Well, okay, nice. So, well, before to continue my presentation, I will just give you some information about globally how Europe behaves and what are the results. As you can see, there was an increase in the data sets availability across the years up to 2014, globally for Europe. But since 2014, there is almost no progress. And there is a plateau. As you can see, the view services just enable you to see barely a bit more than the half of the data sets available. And just 42% of the data sets are available in download. So this is not much. And if we have a closer look to the evolution across the year, in the last report, as you can see, the just three countries were on track. So they have successfully and fully implemented the directive and the deadlines. 12 of them did not reach the objective, but are evolving positively. 8 of them are just stagnating, and 5 of them did not start or did not meet at all the requirements of the directive. And if you have a look to the conformity, then you could see just for Annex 1, we are supposed to have all data sets compliant. As you can see, it is not the case. And if you have a look to all annexes included, then again, the score is not good at all for Europe globally. Well, of course, I cannot explain everything in every country, but I will try to give a focus on why it is so difficult in Belgium, specifically in Belgium. But I believe you will probably be faced to the same issues as we did. First of all, of course, this is quite complex because the geodata are provided by several government levels in Belgium. We have the federal state and we have 3 regions. And if we have a closer look to the geodata available among the 34 teams, then as you can see, we have chance in Belgium, 3 teams, we have no data for 3 teams. But for the 34 teams, there is coordination needed for 24 teams. So we need coordination with the vast majority of the data teams for which we have geodata available. So this is why the transposal of the directive was made not only by a law and a regional decrees or the ordinance, but also with the cooperation agreement. In the framework of this cooperation agreement, coordination committee was created. I am the chairman of that committee, but also a forum that did not meet yet, and several working groups across the years. Along the years, there were, first of all, of course, a working group about metadata, and then later on, a working group for addresses, buildings, coordinate reference system, hydrography, administrative units, and still working on those subjects. And in the framework of the coordination committee, we are also supposed to manage the relationships with the European Commission for Belgium. Why coordination? Well, of course, because when a data set globally for Belgium is made of different data sets that we combine, we have to provide a unique identifier for objects. We do not have a coordinate reference system used by all the parties in Belgium until now, so we should evolve to another compliant coordinate reference systems. We have also to take into account the hierarchy between the data sets provided by the different government levels. And we also have to manage the cross-border objects, of course, when we have an object that is flowing across the regions, for instance, like we have some river or flows, then we have to provide coherent information crossing the borders inside Belgium and outside, of course. We have also to take into account the fact that the geodata we provide are also used in other environment-related reports based on other inspired directives, on other European directives, sorry. And recently, we were also facing the GDPR, and for some data sets, we have to have a close look to the data set because of this new regulation. But, of course, last but not least, there is also the PSI directive, the Public Sector Information Directive. And in the framework of our Inspire directive, we deployed catalogs. Most of us are using GeoNetwork catalogs. But in the framework of the PSI directive, in open data, we also have catalogs, the CCAN catalogs, and we have to arrange that we do not duplicate the work. And so finally, we had to look for a solution for that, to avoid the duplicates and to avoid doing twice the work. Finally, we are looking for transformation through the GeoDCAT AP application profile to harvest automatically the GeoNetwork catalog and to put the data online via the CCAN catalog. So, but it is a work to be done. We are also facing the issue that some instances in Belgium want or are able to provide data for free with no fee, but other instances are obliged by their regulation to get money for the data they provide. And so there is a tension when you provide a data set that is combining data from different authorities. And also the question of the licenses. Although we are all working in the same committee, the PSI directive was involved in the 4 different government levels differently. We all provide kind of open data licenses, but they are not similar. And so, again, there is a problem when you provide a data set like addresses. We are working on addresses, and the regional registers are made available through different licenses. But at the same time, there are opportunities in the Inspire directive, because although it's a tough task to implement the directive, we also want to do more than what was expected, because we see opportunities like building authoritative data sets, what we call authentic sources, namely for addresses. And so building on work that was done before the directive, we intensified our work and we signed a cooperation agreement between the 4 parties, the federal government and the 3 regions. And we already put 3 regional registers available, and we are building services, harmonized services to access and feed those registers. They are supposed to be online beginning of next year. We are also working on building registers, and we will follow the same direction. There is a working group that already agreed upon a common definition of the building. We speak about basic objects. We don't speak about buildings that will cover all the needs. We just need a definition that will enable us to share information across public bodies about the same building. So a cooperation agreement will be signed, we hope, in the coming months. And the decision we propose is to work with 3 regional registers and also build harmonized services to access them. And finally, a third important authoritative data set we are working on is the administrative units. The working group is currently basing its work on cadastre-based hierarchical subdivisions, like the boundaries of the country, the regions, the provinces, and municipalities. We want to get official, validated borders that could be approved by all the parties. And we will also try to keep historical versions of those administrative units. And this is quite important, as some municipalities will be fused in the coming months and before the elections of this year. So this is important to keep historical versions of those data sets. And finally, if we look to the Belgian digits this time, then you can see the evolution is still quite good, and there is a strong positive evolution for the download availability. The view availability is pretty good if compared with the rest of Europe. The conformity also, so we can be quite proud of the results, even if we still have to tackle some issues. And finally, I would give you a good example of what was made possible thanks to the INSPIRE directive, an example of an application that was designed by the Flanders region, combining data from the buildings, the building data sets, the elevation data set, in fact, a digital surface model, and meteorological information, and also combining information about a business, coming from a business directory. And so the goal of this application was to evaluate for each roof in Flanders what was the potentiality for solar heating or photovoltaic panels, so sun energy put on the roof. And so for each roof, it was made possible for 2.5 million buildings to measure the surface and the slope of the different parts of the roof, to identify the sun exposure and take the shadows of chimneys, trees, buildings into account, and so to finally propose either for solar cells or photovoltaic cells or for solar heating, how many cells you can place on the roof, how much it will cost, what will be your savings on your energy bill, how long it will take to be repaid thanks to those savings, how much CO2 you will not exhaust and you will not emit, and finally, the system also proposed a list of certified installers. If you are interested, I can show you a little demo because it's quite nice to see. If I still have some time.
3 minutes.
3 minutes, oh, it's more than enough. Well, that's it. So here, I just write an address. As you can see. I probably typed. Sorry for that. It's not easy. I know. Strat, I forgot the R. Okay. Really not easy when you are not in front of the screen. That's it. Okay. As you can see, the system already knows very well the addresses in Flanders. So it opens a map with the position of your buildings, and then you can calculate by yourself and see your building. So see the different parts of the roof, the one that is exposed, the one that is not exposed, as the solar exposure. And immediately you get what I told you. You get how many cells you have to put, how much it will cost, the savings every year, the time you need to be repaid by the savings, and the CO2 you do not emit. And finally, here, the list of installers here for photovoltaic cells, and you immediately receive the list of certified installers. So this is closing my presentation. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much. My name is Himke from Germany, and well, the question is, how do you manage this with the safety of the personal data? If you look at this address, you perhaps know that's your neighbor, and if you're given the address, I know exactly he has to spend 11,000 euros. So how did you manage that?
Is there anybody from Flanders that could answer this question? Because I have no idea.
No idea.
I suspect this is not quite intrusive information, because you never get the name of your neighbor. You just have information about his roof, as you can get information about your own roof. So
in the Netherlands,
this was not my roof.
In the Netherlands, it's free open data, because you can see with your eyes how big the roof is, and you can make all the measurements if you like yourself. So it's not privacy. We protect it.
But if you want to be cautious and you are reluctant to do this treatment, you could raise the question to. In Belgium, we have a special body where you can address the question and get an answer. Is this a privacy issue or not? And you get an authorization to do the processing. Because indeed, like you mentioned, the data set as such are not privacy related, but when you combine different data sets, then you may get some problems. So maybe the processing of those data sets may be contrary to the laws.
We have defined, good afternoon again. We have defined the main elements of the geospatial frame in Turkey, utilizing the inspired methodology and the principles. This has been implemented by as a main beneficiary, Ministry of Environment and Urbanization in Turkey, and specifically conducted by a consortium led by BPR, my company, and the people contributing this project from Spain. And all the authors displayed in this slide are here, and General Director, and the other directors here. What's happening here? So, mention about the geospatial framework and the achievements. And I don't want to ask the similar questions as the Frenchers did, because I don't feel the necessity, because all the people doing geospatial business here in this room or outside, especially for the governmental solutions, are busy with one of the issues displayed here: adaptation of environmental legislations, and adaptation of geospatial standards like the INSPIRE Directive, OGC and the others, ISO TC 211, and of course the design of geospatial frame, considering the issues of data and data sets, services and implementation tools like the geoportals linked to application modules, etc. Our target model, target group is the municipalities throughout Turkey. It amounts to about 1,365 municipalities. Among them, we have selected 4 pilot region, and they have been adapted for a specific criteria and defined by ministry with respect to the INSPIRE Directive Annexes readiness level. And why are they target group? The municipalities are the main resources and the users of spatial data in INSPIRE context. And they are the municipalities, they have some deficiency in financial and human resources, especially they don't have so much money investing to the IT, or they don't have so much experts. They have lacked as the number, and the training is a little bit cumbersome. So this causes delays for the establishment of the anticipated geospatial infrastructure, and also this is the motivation of our project. Our work envisaged the following issues: standard data to be shared by nationwide, and application models developed by our consortium to be used by all municipalities, services to be implemented by almost all stakeholders, and the process management tools to be used also by municipalities, and regulations to be implemented by Geospatial Society in Turkey, and trainings to be benefited by geospatial staff, either working here or working in the geospatial projects or using the geospatial projects outputs. And this is also constituting the components of the implemented project. Our outline, geospatial outline, consisting of 57 professional institutions or departments, including those 4 departments, Directorate General of GIS under Ministry of Environment and Urbanization. One of them is the Land Registry and Cadastre and National Mapping Agency, and the Department of Naval Forces, Oceanography and Navigation are the main providers, and the users are everybody, and also the municipalities, and also including those people stated here. And we have assessed the data in pilot areas. This is the average figure, 52% of the data availability in the local administrations. Among them, 6.25 is ready in terms of the INSPIRE status, and the rest of the data here in this pilot municipalities are the data which is ready to transform to INSPIRE scheme of directive. And this is one of the diagrams that we have compiled from the assessment result from one of the municipality. Here in the blue ones are the data which is ready, INSPIRE compatible, and the red ones are the INSPIRE available data, but they are transformable with respect to of course, the annexes of the INSPIRE directive. And the green ones are the data which has been stored in the other institutions like the Land Register or the National Mapping Agency or Directorate General GIS under Ministry. And the data production that we have adopted is the simple flow diagram. We have obtained the data from the institutions, and we have pre-analyzed the data and created the transformation tables and performed the transformations and controlled after them and generate the GML data files compatible to the INSPIRE directive. And the workflow is similar to the one that I have mentioned. And resource data and the resource model has been combined to fill in some of the matching tables. And we use the Hail program, utilizing the matching tables and simultaneously check them and created the Inspire GML data gathered from the both municipalities and the institutions abroad the country. This is one of the sample address schema display. This is the attributive numbers in the address schema in annex. The number of the attributes in the blue, and the mandatory areas, and the areas which has been filled as mandatorily in Turkey. This is one of the example. And the general panorama of the committing the mandatory fields is not so much good. It is about 24% of it is committed, and the rest of them is the on the way of committing, because there are some deficiencies in the data which is compatible to the all the data schemes of each annex data. These are the data types given by the institutions. And we have adopted, as you are familiar with this diagram, this main scheme of operation of Inspire. This has been done by Directorate General GIS. Also, the metadata is almost ready in this department. And geospatial data is following the view, download, and transfer services. And they are all under the intellectual and proprietary rights management level, at the service level. And they, it has been connected through an internet defined under the GeoPortal, which has been implemented by Directorate GIS. And this is the breakdown of the diagram used, actually conducted in our project is the cloud system, which are geomodels. I am just speaking about them later. And the process models are on the cloud system. And the main users, the municipalities, and the main data providers are the national stakeholders coming from data through VMS, VFS, and the VCS adopting the OGC standards. And also the data is coming from the MOE, and Ministry of Environment and Urbanization directories through cloud system. All the programs that we have developed in the project is going to be utilized through an e-government system by the municipalities and by the citizens utilizing the services of the municipalities. And these are the names of the cloud-based geospatial models that we have developed in our project. And this is the main entrance of the portal. And these are all the programs that we have developed. It is the assessment, address assessment, and the cemetery, Article 18, elevation model, infrastructure, cloud storage, city guide, and so on. Building inventory, all the running on cloud system. This is the main cloud infrastructure platform, which has been designed in Open Nebula ecosystem, and the front-end integration diagram. The data stores and the Open Nebula front-end and the host virtual machines are connected with each other, service network, and they are all correlated with each other, and they are being served through the virtual machine network system. And this is the entire system of the system architecture that we have developed on the cloud. The entire system was built on a completely service-based architecture. System components of all the applications are positioned both in order to grow horizontally and vertically. They are very elastical. And the programs that we have developed for the municipalities, free of charge, they are going to use in any time through the students or the staff working in the municipalities. And all the system reporting service, business process engine, metadata catalog is using the enterprise data exchange backbone. And these are being fed by the stakeholders and the other projects of the Ministry of Environmental and Urbanization, like the spatial planning automation, 3D topography urban data model, building energy efficiency, etc. And this is the diagram of the processing model and management. What is this? This is an application of the staff working in the municipalities. They can model their workflows with respect to the input and output results that while they are serving to the citizens. It has been modeled by BPM notation. It's an activity, as you know, it's an open source business process management model. Staff anytime can adjust his or her task. And they have so many tools and integration with the application softwares that I have mentioned are working in harmony with each other. And this is the process management configuration for application softwares. For example, this is an Article 18. It's a spatial implementation in the infrastructure level. Also, any person can adjust the process management through this system, and this is the flow diagram. What we have got for the implementation of a plan and methodology in the realization of our project, we have drafted a regulation between the ministry and the municipalities, and we have drafted a memorandum of understanding of the cloud system, how they are going to use and how they are going to exchange the data with this. And these are all feeding the implementation plan and methodology together with the initial process management model. And we have done an as-is and gap analysis, which has been fed by to-be process model, and we have updated the initial process, which is going to be used by organization plan, and again used by the plan and methodology. And this is the training, of course, the training and awareness raising. We have trained about 1,340 staff throughout Turkey in order to use this system. And we have got so many questionnaires, and they are all satisfactory from the respect of the raising awareness of the project outputs. And also we have drafted legislative reports, which is the main elements of the geospatial infrastructure. So in order to summarize, we have done a cloud management system and datasets and services, and the legislative documentations, all feeding the exchange network between ministries, national bank producers, local administrations, and other structures, utilizing the main issues of the exchange of the data system through geoportals. All the portals of the institutions getting the mission of providing the data to the ministry. So they are going to be, in the near future, they are going to feed the data to EU-inspired geoportal. Results, the project has been finalized, and the design of the geospatial frame has been identified. This has been achieved by not only the outputs of the project, but also the ministry's experiences gained from its previous projects like TUJBS and Urban Cloud Infrastructure Project. Inspire sets geospatial bar, as you know, with true technical guidance. However, for some users, this bar is too high from the respect of the implementations. The implemented geospatial frame elements on the cloud made Turkey a very good start, but a simple start for future, and society of environmental friendly applications will be envisaged at the end. And this has been achieved by the old persons here in this slide. It's a consortium led by BPR Consulting in Turkey, and the other members from Turkey and Spain. And we have got the intellectual and constructive support by all the stakeholders, and the beneficiary of the Directory of GIS under Ministry of Environment and Urbanization. The Vice Director is here also in the audience, and Director of our BPR is also in the audience now. And our project coordination team is seen here. I would like to thank you, all of them, because they deserve so much in the realization of our project. Thank you very much for your patience.
Okay.
I come from the Czech Office for Surveying, Mapping and Cadastre, and topic of my presentation is GDPR and how and whether it influenced INSPIRE implementation and information system of Czech real estate cadastre. I will briefly mention GDPR principles, then source data information systems and workflow, and mainly I will handle with the relation of GDPR and INSPIRE implementation, GDPR and Czech real cadastre estate, and what measures has been taken. I know that everybody knows this abbreviation. I found three basic principles in this document. That's legitimacy, transparency, and adequacy. Legitimacy means that personal data can be processed in case there is a legal reason for the processing. Legal reason means on national level. So in this case, national legislations influence the GDPR implementation. Otherwise, only with acceptance of the subject. Transparency means that personal data must be processed in a transparent way, that the subject must be informed about the purpose, which personal data will be processed, whether they will be provided and to whom, etc. And adequacy means that personal data processing and provision must be adequate to the purpose. That's all about GDPR. Now, briefly, source data information system. There's in the upper part, Cadastre information system edited by Cadastre offices, and information system of territorial identification edited by municipalities, construction offices, etc. They contain full history and share some common data like buildings. And what is important, they feed basic register of territorial identification addresses and real estates is a very important register as public administration is obliged to use this data, and the publication database which serves as a solution for INSPIRE and other services. So in this case, our office runs these four INSPIRE themes, and data like parcel numbers, addresses, is not assumed to be personal data. Furthermore, according to Czech legislation, it's open data by law because it's a subset of RUAN data, and that's why even INSPIRE download services of these themes are open as well. Another story is GDPR and real estate cadastre. There is one important principle. According to the Czech cadastre law, cadastre data is assumed to be a public list, so everybody can view it without obstacles. We process name, surname, personal identification number or date of birth, and address as a personal data. And we never ever will delete it as we are obliged to keep full history. The principle of transparency is solved by displaying detailed information of our web pages. And the last principle of adequacy. Above mentioned range of personal data is adequate to the purpose to identify owner or other person. On the other hand, we have to implement some changes in data provision. In this slide, you can see the list of our services. There's view and download services, two very important applications, viewing cadastre and remote access, even with web services to the cadastre of real estates. And that one which has had to be changed, and that's the file form of cadastre data called cadastre exchange format. It has two parts, digital cadastre map and the written part. Digital cadastre map is open data by law, so it's free. But in the written part, newly personal data will be replaced by internal identifier of the person only. And the new web service will be developed to provide personal data using this identifier. And this service, secondly, will be provided just to the users of Exchange format. Adequacy of the using will be monitored, and misuse will be prosecuted. So that's how the original Exchange format looked like with personal data, and that's the new one with just ID. So let's go to the conclusions to have some time for discussion. We do not plan any crucial changes in data provision from real estate cadastre due to GDPR, and no changes in Inspire implementation. Range of services provided is not changed. On the other hand, due to compliance with the principle of adequacy of personal data, formally provided data in a file form will be substituted by a web service, and the user will obtain personal data only to the extent they really need in this way. And finally, as provision of data is driven by regulation, the legislation had to be changed, so we expect to start running of this change by the end of this year. Thank you for your attention.
How do you ensure the confidentiality of this identifier? Say, for example, I know my neighbor owns the house next door, and I look up the identifier for that parcel, and then I see there's 10 other parcels with the same identifier, and I know it's my neighbor's parcels.
Sorry, could you slow down a bit?
I just want to give an example to understand how this identifier works, this personal identifier you're talking about. So, for example, my neighbor owns the parcel, and then I look in the database and I find 10 other parcels which have the same identifier as my neighbor's parcel. So then I can infer that those other 10 parcels are also my neighbor's parcels. So, and then it's not anonymous anymore.
Yes, using this identifier, you can find all the parcels to separate identifier, but not the name of the neighbor.
Yeah, but if I live next to him, I know his name, and then it's not anonymous anymore.
Yes. You know his name anyway. But you know, if you come to the desk of Cadastre offices, and you will hand your identification card, you will get this information as well.
Because it's the same in the Netherlands, the cadastral information
it's not a secret, but the provision of this information and others like this is strictly monitored, both by the remote access application or at the desk of Cadastre office. That's what I say, that legislation, national legislation, GDPR implementation is strictly dependent on national legislation, and this is a part of regulation which allows to get information about the property of your neighbor.
Another question here from France.
Thank you. I'm Marc Léaubert from France, and really my felicitations, because to resume GDPR in 2 slides, it's magic. So we had the same discussion about identifiers, and we decided to adopt it too, because the secret is not about the identifier, but it is forbidden to treat them outside of GDPR. So for what the colleague talks about, if you do that treatment, you will be prosecuted. But so we had months of discussion in France. Could you explain the different possibilities you examined before to take identifier, or it was obvious in your country?
Okay, did you investigate any other options? Did you investigate any other options in Czech Republic for
Well, we tried to find a way how to monitor data which were for years available. You can't monitor what happens with a file, but you can monitor a web service, and you can decide whether there is a real need of such a data or there is a misuse of using this data. So that's about, let's say, the environment around data provision, which was historically in the Czech Republic very, very open. So you can't shut the door and say all the users, you won't get anything.
Yes, welcome everyone. I'm Jabim Schaukma. I have two hats, so I will explain it right now. I work at the Dutch Cadastre. I do it almost full time, and next to it I also work for Wageningen University as a PhD candidate. And in this presentation I have my Wageningen University hat on, and we'll talk more about what I do in my PhD research. Thursday, I will talk on behalf of the Cadastre about what I do as Cadastre staff member, so also interesting. But first, we will look at the governability, difficult word, of spatial data infrastructures. And to understand that, we first have to know what are spatial data infrastructures. Well, everyone has, some idea, but nobody has a really clear definition of a spatial data infrastructure, or they have, but they conflict with other definitions. But you can see, especially also in academic literature, 5 main components. Policies, technology, standards, people, and also data. And the interesting thing is when you look at, for example, the governance of all those components, is that you can see that they are all really dynamic. So as the previous talk explained, for example, on policy level, we have Inspire, which is in policy, but we also have the GDPR. So we have to manage both things and comply to both policies. Of course, you also have national policies, etc. But governance is broader than only about policies. It's also about what is your data governance, your governance about your technology, about your people, your stakeholders, and the standards. And the difficult thing is that they are all on the move. Technology is continuously on the move. People have every day new user demands. Standards also change. We don't have all the money in the world, so we have to make choices, and we have to make sound choices. So therefore, we really need some kind of SDI governance. And not only for every component, like the policy data, but it also have to make sense on the whole spectrum. So an SDI is more than only its parts, it's more than the sum of its parts. But then we have another difficult question, what is governance exactly? And like spatial data infrastructures, also definitions of governance vary from person to person, from scholar to scholar. But you can see some common ingredients, and that makes things a bit simpler, but it's still quite a complex subject. For example, governance always starts with people, with actors, with stakeholders, which can be on the individual level, on the national level, like, for example, Inspire, organizational level, and also, of course, with different roles, like is it a government agency, a market, or a company, or is it a civilian? We have institutions or structures which, I also visualize as the rule of the game. So what can be done and what can't be done. And it can be formal rules like a law, a policy, GDPR, for example, but also informal rules, culture. And of course, we have a kind of a mechanism where we interact with. And you can have different mechanisms to interact. For example, you can say you have to do it like a hierarchy style. You can do it in cooperation, collaboration with each other. But also what you can see, of course, is that bottom-up things are coming up by interactions with your neighbor about, for example, solar panels. And governance is then not about every thing, but it's also about the total gameplay. So how does the game evolve? And it's not about who wins the game, of course, but it's about the process that is during the game. And when you play, for example, this game, you also know that every time you play the game, it develops different. So it's not clear when you start as a blue figure, you also win. That's not the rule. So my challenge of my research is to combine those two complex subjects, to study governance and to study spatial data infrastructures and see how it will how does it work effectively. And the first step I took was looking into the past. For example, what already happened in the field of governance and spatial data infrastructures. And in the Netherlands, we are lucky because we have a really, really old data set, which is already coming from the 70s. It was created analog, but it was also really driven by various stakeholders to collaborate with each other and to create, a combined data set. It was a large-scale base map. And also, I took a case in Flanders, which was a bit younger, but still also from the 1990s, which he also developed the GRB, which is also a large-scale base map of Flanders. And what's interesting when you see, in the long term, what all happens with those things, is that you can see that there is quite some dynamics going on between actors, between those structures, and between those interactions, and they aren't not stable. So also the roles of the actors change. What's also quite interesting, I think, is that they was quite slow in progress at the start. So when the first idea of the base map was launched, people were excited. Then they need to go into action, and not a lot happened. So some you can call it crisis moments sparked also self-organization between all those stakeholders and said, well, we have to do it differently. And they improved their governance and became also more productive. What I found also was quite striking is that, from the first idea they had for, we have to create a common data set, to the, actual implementation of the data set and a successful launch, and it was really used and also covered the whole country. It took almost, in both countries, 20 to 25 years. Which is, of course, we are now at the Spire conference. We officially started 2008. So we are actually going quite fast if you connect to the talk of Belgium, for example. And another striking thing is that SDI governance, I called became more mature. So there was more kind of self-steering, there was more kind of networks. But what's also really striking is that there were also more hierarchies involved in managing spatial data infrastructure. And I tried to depict it in this graph by looking at, what kind of hierarchical instruments were there over time. Like, for example, was there a central coordination board? Was there central funding? Was there a law in place? And what you can see here was the development of the blue line was how it went in the Netherlands. Interesting thing was that around the start of the 1990s, they actually said, we are not making any progress. We quit as government, and you have to find out yourself how you manage to create such a base map. And that it actually became really productive. And then the organization lobbied to become an authentic register again. And then you can see, it was honored by the central government, and also the central steering instruments and mechanisms increased quite a lot. In Flanders, it was more a gradual movement. So they had the first IDs around the 1990. They also did some networking cooperation. It became also honored by the government, and they get a degree in 2004, I think, to make the GRB. And since that on, also the production of the map went really fast. But of course, answers always lead to more questions. And interesting is, for example, can we measure how mature now SDI governance is? And for example, can we measure to determine its governability? For example, the capacity to solve urgent problems and to see how adaptive it really is. And therefore, we have to dive deeper into its into the governing process and its mechanisms. What's also interesting to know is everything starts with a problem. Also, Inspire started with a problem. For example, we don't have enough information about cross-border ecological information, and they are all those things lead to an instrument which is chosen. Well, actually, Inspire is an instrument to solve the problem of cross-border environmental information. And then it's, of course, implemented into action. And that's not always easy to really implement it into action, because things can go sideways where you thought in your image that it will go, straight ahead. And of course, it's also infecting other actors. And those actors will also provide feedback. And that feedback will again change the image of the governing actor. And you can imagine that, in every governing process there is feedback, but depending on how good you listen to that feedback, things can go into crisis, or you can adapt and improve your governing. Another interesting thing, which is also we called about the rules of the game, the structures, laws, standards, policies, etc., but also culture. They facilitate that what you can call the governing process, the action level, and but they can also constrain. I think there are many governmental people here, and I think they all know how frustrating some bureaucracy, for example, can be. Well, we have now a theoretical picture about a governing process, about governance, and then what to do with SDIs. Well, in SDI literature, there's a lot written also about what kind of instruments are really good for SDIs, which you all have to apply. But when you put it, for example, in this framework, you can see it's a quite long list. But so the next research step I will take, and unfortunately I didn't have to know results this year, perhaps coming year, about which instruments can we also really see that are in practice used. And for example, are there things in the quadrant which you saw of this table which are lacking in SDI governance? Well, with my next research steps, I will try to provide answers for that, because everyone is looking for answers. But the thing is with governance, how more you try to find answers, the more questions you will have. And we will dive deeper in that and also try to find what can we find in theory which also applies into practice, and what can we see in practice which isn't really found in literature. I hope to find some answers, and also, you can also always keep in touch. To be continued. And for now, I will like to thank you, and I'm not sure if we have time for one question, but.
Yeah, Rinkruk from the National Mapping Agency of Belgium. Thank you very much for your very nice presentation, very informative. I had a question about about the graph you demonstrated. it showed the amount of laws or decrees or arrêtés that was imposed during the years. But is there also a productivity or appreciation graph that coincides with those lines?
No, it would be interesting to include it, especially as you can see that from the 1990s to 2002, then it was the most productive year in the Netherlands for the first time. And the second time it went from 2012 to 2017. So it doesn't seem to match for in this case. In Belgium, you can clearly see that it does match. So more hierarchical instruments also provide more productivity. So it would be nice to include it, yes.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon, everyone. First of all, I would like to introduce myself. I am Antonio Arozarena, the Senior Advisor of the Land Observation International Mapping Agency of Spain in Madrid, and also represent Spain in the UNGIM in the United Nations in New York, and also represent Spain in the Copernicus User Forum. In my presentation, I intend to transmit all of you all my knowledge, very summarized, especially my concern, especially for the fundamental data set of the geospatial reference data. In this review, I will present 5 points. The first of all, I would like to summarize all of you. You know very well the situation of the knowledge of the Geospatial Reference Information. Is the name that we are using in this moment in Spain. The Geospatial Reference Information is crucial because it provides an unambiguous location for users' data. It enables merging of data from various sources. It provides geographical framework in order to understand all the land, all the territory. Also is subject to a regular data maintenance for a public body. And also, it is crucial regarding the United Nations, it is provided by an authoritative source. This point is crucial, it's political point of view. Also, the key point for the Geospatial Reference Information or the Geospatial Reference Data or the fundamental data set, it facilitates the integration of all existing data inside the country and outside the country. It's the best system to increase the coordination and coherence between all public bodies. After ISPIRE, all the people here, we are in the ISPIRE meeting. And also my final conclusion is what happened with ISPIRE for the final users. It's completely necessary to define the geospatial reference information, future, not the existing data set, the future data set, at all levels in order to make useful the data from the member states. Could imply new production system. We are thinking for the present and for the future, not for the past. I would like to remember all of you that in Spain we are using the geospatial reference information in order to define this data set. The geospatial reference data and in situ, Annex 1 and Annex 2 for ISPIRE, inside of Copernicus and ISPIRE, and the United Nations use the fundamental data set. It is important to remember again the geospatial reference data for the public body point of view is official, reliable, accuracy, sustainable, and homogeneous at all levels. I would like to remember you because we approved in the last month of August in New York the 14 different fundamental data teams from the geodetic to the orthoimagery. I would like to remember that 7 of these fundamental data set is included in the ISPIRE Annex 1, 4 is included in the Annex number 2, and finally, the last one, the building, is included in the ISPIRE Annex 3. We are speaking the all same topics, the skeleton of the territory, from the authoritative data set for the public bodies. From the United Nations, we define 14 different data set in order to satisfy the 17 Sustainable Development Goal. All 17 sustainable data set, they need completely the fundamental data set, all. But the most important goals that they need the fundamental data set is the number 2, number 6, 7, 9, and 11. But all needs the fundamental data set. All need our work. I would like to remember the fundamental data set is defined for the United Nations, UNGGIM, in order to satisfy the Sustainable Development Goals. The geospatial reference data and in situ, Copernicus, and in this case, managed for the EA with mandate for the European Commission, need the 14 plus the statistical units and land use. And finally, is our point of view, my point of view from Spain, we need only in this moment, when we are producing in this moment, 10 different data sets. But the question for today, is possible to satisfy from the bottom or not? Especially because SPI defined at the end of the last year that we accomplished, in this moment, we accomplished the 7 different data sets that it is possible to use. Well, the second point, the backbone, because the fundamental data set is very complicated. What is the transportation network, for example? How many attributes it is necessary in order to accomplish from the global to the national, or from the national to the global, is complicated. For this reason, it's possible to produce the core, geospatial reference information, the backbone, the skeleton of all the information of the territory, from the public point of view. In this case, it's possible to produce, first of all, at the member states, and it is necessary, it is completely necessary, this core, this backbone, we produce from the member states. After that, from the geospatial reference information, with more detail, it's possible to collaborate with the private sector, of course, in order to produce the geospatial information, and after that, in order to manage this information. The core probably is possible. In Spain, we are defining is not subjective data, accurate, at the maximum level allowed by the current technology, is the same skeleton for all different levels, and also we are produced at automatically point of view. The key question is, today it's possible and necessary to look for consistency between geometry and topology at different resolution levels. Approaches to short and long term are necessary carry out from the beginning, step by step. From the beginning is now, not in the next 10 years. The coherence is necessary not only between digital elevation model, for example, is the first step of the fundamental data set, and hydro. It is necessary between all basic layers of the geospatial reference information, transportation network, urban settlement, etc. The digital elevation model and hydrographic network, it is necessary first steps in order to construct the core geospatial reference information for everyone from the public point of view. For example, it's possible to produce in this moment using a very LiDAR, using the digital elevation model at 1 meter grid. After that, it's possible to generalize of this information and to produce automatically the hydrographic network in coherence between the hydrographic and digital elevation models. Steps in order to accomplish this situation. First, the technical requirement and national, continental, and global. It's necessary to know this requirement. After that, the data model, in this moment, existing, the data model from the INSPIRE. After that, the images needed, the new production system, the core, internet platform. The platform is possible to facilitate at the continental level. And the question is the new production system in order to satisfy the new data set in order to accomplish the real needs at national, continental, and global. One system, for example, this is an example that we are carrying out in this moment in Spain. We have produced the core data set. It's an example, of course, it's an example in Spain. in order to define the requirements and hydrographic transportation network, urban and settlement, land cover, etc. After that, or at the same time, we are now the data model. In this case, we have the data model for Inspire, and it's possible to construct a platform in order to integrate all the information. After that, the Geospatial Reference Information at the continental level. In this case, it's necessary a new production system in order to satisfy the Copernicus services using Inspire and the member states. Conclusion. This is the first and the most important part for me. It's a very good opportunity because this is the Inspire community concentrated in this moment here, not the Copernicus. There are many people also are in the Copernicus forum. The question is, the benefit for the member states is official national data used for European responses, new user and new business perspective, sustainable of the production, benefit of the Copernicus, the official national data, data comparable, avoiding misunderstanding, cost reduce. A benefit for the third parties is the business in the data integration and homogenization for the private sector. Use the same geospatial reference information for everyone, avoid duplicities, more efficient, reliable, great economic saving, and intellectual property of geospatial reference information corresponding to the member states. But the question is today, we are finalized the Annex number 1 for Inspire. In the last year. And why is the reason? Because Copernicus, they are not used in this moment the information that we are producing in the member state. Which is the reason? I know the reason, of course. Most of you know which is the reason, but we spend a lot of money, a lot of meetings of the Inspire, and now Copernicus acquired the information for the private sector. They said last week in Brussels that for the hydrographic network, for the digital elevation model, and for the transportation network, they are a public tender, different for the industry, not for all of you, for the industry. Which is the reason? After more than 15 years in Copernicus, more than 10 years in Inspire, spend a lot of money, and now, for the public body, for the public point of view, not for the private, they are using the information for the private sector. Duplicate this information from the member state. We spend for the member state twice. First, spend very important money in the Inspire in order to accomplish the calendar. And also, the public tender that they are published in the next week for the Copernicus, also we pay for the member states. We duplicate the 4. And the problem is there will be 2 different data sets, one from the member states, Inspire, and the other produced for the services of Copernicus, spend a lot of money in order to obtain the same that we have in this moment. I understand that the problem for the Copernicus, but the question is, how is possible to solve this important misunderstanding between the Copernicus and Inspire or not? And in the future, there will be 2 different data sets. What political problem we will have in the future? Final conclusion. In order to implement the bottom-up approach, is necessary a clear political decision. In order to put in the same way Copernicus and Inspire at all levels and time. I know that Copernicus needs for tomorrow all the information, but it is necessary probably to carry out this way together, not Inspire for one side and Copernicus for another one. The implementation of new paradigm needs the collaboration of following factors: technical, economical, administrative, and political. This definition was for the United Nations. Thank you very much.
Imke from Germany. We've had a session this morning about priority data sets for the Commission looking from e-reporting and Inspire, and you come from Copernicus and Inspire. When we use for water management analysis these sort of data, for big scales we use our own, for small scales we use Copernicus data. If I want to have agriculture information over 160,000 square kilometers of the Elbe River, I need one data set overall. And if I have local problems, I have to take other data sets. But for interoperability, we have to solve your problem to bring these systems together. So it might be a good idea you talk also to Mr. Jensen from the EEA to bind these things together. Thank you.
Yes, of course, it is political decision. It's not in this moment, in my opinion, technical decision. Because I know which is the situation of Spire today. Spire, in the Annex 1, finalized at the end of the last year, in theoretical way. But it is possible to use at the continental level? Not. The problem is not possible, not only for technical, also for political licensing, and other different topics, the accessibility. I understand this situation. It's not possible to use at the continental level Spire in this moment, not only for agriculture, for many different topics. But the question is it possible for the member state to carry out two different data sets from the transportation network for the Copernicus at very high resolution, not a small resolution, very high resolution in this moment, produced for a private company and another we are producing for Spire? It is necessary, in my opinion. We are discussing this topic with my colleague Stefan Jensen and any other people in the European Environmental Agency and the Commission for more than 3 years. Many countries were discussing this topic for more than 30 years. In the last week in Brussels, I received a message. Finally, we are producing a new open tender for the industry for the produced transportation network, digital elevation model, and hydrographic network. And we are discussing here in this meeting about the Inspire. Inspire is not useful in this moment for the most important client in this moment in Europe, the Copernicus. It's not useful. What happened in this moment? What is the solution for the public point of view? Political decision.
Okay, I like to conclude with this conclusion. So there's a lot of work to do. Thank you very much. I like